Chapter 4:15 Battles. When was I too harsh? I thought while my feet came to a sudden stop and I looked behind me where the others were. Thinking back at the words I said to Kevin and the others, I thought that perhaps I may have been a little bit too harsh on them. But thinking back at their behavior after my actions, I didn't regret what I said one bit. If what I said helped them become aware of their mentality, then so be it. They could think whatever they wanted about me. At the end of the day, what mattered was that they became strong. Strong enough to defeat the Demon King. Taking a deep breath, I leaned my body against the three and waited for the others to come. Fortunately, I didn't have to wait for long as Amanda was the first one to come. Walking underneath the moonlight, Amanda held her bow with her right hand. Her fine black hair draped over her shoulders, while the moonlight shone behind her, enhancing her delicate features. The beautiful scene was akin to a painting. Smiling at her, I opened my mouth and asked, "You guys done sorting your stuff out?" With a simple nod, she greeted me. But right as she nodded, her head tilted a little as her delicate brows knit together. Noticing the change in her expression, I asked, "What is it?" "Your face," she bluntly said. My brow raised at her unexpected answer. "Is there something wrong with my face?" Touching my face with both hands, I found nothing wrong with it. Staring at me from a few steps away, Amanda sighed as she took a step forward. Before I knew it, she was a few inches away from me. Raising her hands, she put her hands on my face, squishing my cheeks softly. "What are you doing?" I instantly became startled by her actions. But before I could say anything else, Amanda placed her finger on her lips. "Shush." "What do you mean shush?" I internally mouthed as Amanda's face was a few inches away from mine. Unknowingly, my heart sped up a little. Compared to the past, Amanda had only gotten more beautiful, and now that she was almost an adult, her features had become even more stunning. Took my breath away. "Fuck, what's going on?" Staring at her face, which was extremely close to me for the first time in a while, I was at a loss for words about what to do as my eyes darted left and right, in hopes of finding something to help me out of my predicament. But it appeared as though I was the only one who felt this way, as Amanda's expression remained unperturbed. "Done." It wasn't long before Amanda took her hand away from my face and I could finally relax. Quickly recomposing myself, I touched my face. "Done." "Done with what?" I was so confused that I did not notice what she was trying to do. Amanda nodded. Noticing my confusion, she pointed toward her face. "You didn't put your skin mask well." "Oh." Realization finally dawned on me. So it was about my mask. Was it because I was in a rush? I wasn't sure, but it appeared as though I had somehow not placed my mask properly. Still, my brows knit as I looked at Amanda. Instead of doing it, you could have just told me and I would have been able to fix it myself. A thought suddenly struck me as my brows knit. Was she teasing me? No, Amanda wasn't the type of girl to do this. Actually, I really wasn't sure anymore. "Is that so?" Amanda innocently tilted her head. From the way she was looking at me, it didn't seem as though she did what she did on purpose. My eyes squinted in doubt. Did she really unknowingly do that? Or is she teasing me? I really couldn't tell. After staring at her for the next second, I decided to let it go and look towards the distance where I could see the faint outlines of the others coming in our direction. Just to be sure. Tilting my head slightly, I tried to peek in Amanda's direction. Aha! It was then that from the corner of my eyes, I saw the corner of Amanda's mouth lift up slightly. My head instantly snapped in her direction. Unfortunately, Amanda was quick to react as her face quickly returned to its serious self. "I saw that." "Saw what?" "Tisk." Seeing that she had returned to her usual poker face, I clicked my tongue. She had definitely done that on purpose. Talking about her poker face, I had a sudden thought as I looked at Amanda. "Say, now that I think about it, have you ever played poker?" Slightly taken aback by my question, Amanda didn't answer immediately. It was clear that she was trying to see if I was trying to retaliate against her or not. It was only after a couple of seconds had passed that she finally answered. As she answered, her voice was filled with vigilance. "Yes, with Emma." "What was the result?" "She called me a menace to the poker community." "That far?" Piffy. A laugh escaped from my lips as a scenario of Emma throwing a tantrum at Amanda flashed in my mind. Guess I found myself a new way to earn money. Glancing at me from the side of her eyes, Amanda's red lips opened up slightly as she asked, "Why did you ask?" Just curious. I replied with a simple smile. Her eyes squinted in doubt, but in the end she didn't say anything. So that's where you guys were. It wasn't long before I heard Kevin's voice coming from the distance. Took you long enough. What do you mean? You do know that there were 3 more bodies to dispose of, right? Yeah, sure. I replied with a lazy look. Judging from how he was still okay despite the words that I said to him, it looked as though he took the words I said to heart. Or at least took them into consideration. I smiled at this. The stronger Kevin became, the brighter my future was. Inside of a private residence. Has he completed the mission or not? Pacing around the room, Jasper tried to remain composed. However, the mere thought of the mission failing caused him endless amounts of anxiety. If there was a chance to get rid of Emma, it was now. There was no better time. If they failed the mission, he would never truly be the main leader of the Rochefield house, as there were still some who were loyal to Oliver. With his current influence, he could have easily kicked them out of the house. However, that would drastically lower the forces of the family, and so he couldn't afford to do that. Cost him to this day. Placing the palm of his hand on his desk, Jasper glanced at the door and muttered. The only way he could fully control the house was through Emma's death. Damned him. Jasper gnashed his teeth in hatred. Just the mere thought of Oliver angered him to no end. Despite the fact that he had disappeared to who knows where, he still created troubles for him everywhere. Veins popped out from his forehead as he thought about the troubles that Oliver's influence still caused him to this day. Placing the palm of his hand on his desk, Jasper glanced at the door and muttered. What is taking him so long? Getting rid of a bunch of children should take no time for an S rank like him. Not even a minute. What could have taken him so long? Fortunately, Jasper did not have to wait for long as someone quickly knocked on the door. Knock. Knock. Jasper's eyes lit up with glee at the sound. Recomposing himself and straightening out his clothes, he sat down on his chair and opened his mouth. A cold and authoritative voice traveled in the air. Come in. See I like. Once his words faded, opening the door, a familiar figure walked in. Brightly smiling, Jasper stood up and extended his hands in a hugging motion. Michael, I'm glad you're finally here. Giving Jasper a casual glance, Michael returned the greeting with a simple nod and did not say a single word. Not minding Michael's attitude, Jasper pointed towards the seat opposite him. Have a seat, have a sit. You must be tired from the mission. Pulling the chair back, Michael sat down and crossed his legs. Once Michael sat down, Jasper did the same. So, is the matter complete? A trace of anticipation and impatientness hid in Jasper's voice as he looked at Michael. Silently staring at him for a couple of seconds, Michael nodded his head. It is. Great. Unable to contain his excitement at the news, a bright smile emerged on Jasper's face and he soon burst out laughing. Ah, wonderful, wonderful. Michael smiled at Jasper's excitement. Are you that happy that Emma died? Of course I am, Jasper replied. The smile on his face grew even bigger. With her gone, I can now have full control of the house. Those old bastards can't prove that I am the one that got rid of her, and so will be forced to listen to my or... Before he could finish his sentence, Jasper's eyes grew wide open as he watched Michael slowly place his hand on his face. What happened after caused his complexion to turn ashen white as his body trembled uncontrollably. Impossible. Smack. With a loud smack, a wooden mask appeared on the table as a figure that bore striking resemblances to Emma, his niece, appeared in front of him. That figure he knew. Of course he knew, how could he not know? It was the same figure that he tried to surpass throughout his whole life. How? With a smile on his face and staring deeply into Jasper's eyes, Oliver replied. Jasper, it has been a while, hasn't it? In a certain room. Crash. Aaron's eyes were bloodshot as he smashed everything in the room. It was a long time before he finally stopped, panting for breath. His face twisting savagely. Bang. Raising his fist, Aaron punched a hole through the wall of his room as he snarled through gnashed teeth. Get out of my fucking head. His scream was filled with resentment and helplessness. Ever since that day, Aaron had been unable to sleep. His head itched all the time and that face beating down on him would resurface in his mind over and over again as though someone was haunting him. Fuck. Rubbing his hair till it became messy, Aaron's face turned ashen as the back of his head started to itch more and more. Covering his face with his hands, blood trickled down his forehead as his nail deeply dug onto his skin. Faint recollections of the pain he felt that day continued to flash in his mind, sending him into an agonizing spiral of pain. Arg! He screamed in agony as his breathing became even heavier. Clenching his fist tightly, Aaron stumbled towards his table and looked through the list of contenders for the round of 64. Scrolling through the list, his eyes soon paused on a certain profile. Carolium. His hands shook uncontrollably. A subconscious fear rose within him when he saw that profile. Nothing was known about him apart from the fact that he was a human. Having made it to the round of 64, Aaron naturally paid close attention to everyone's profile, and when he saw Carolium, something within him itched. After observing him more and more, a horrific realization dawned on him. What if what he experienced was not a fabrication of his dream? From the way he interacted with Kevin, Jean, and the others, there was a very real possibility that that was him. The mere thought caused Aaron to have sleepless nights as glaring black circles formed underneath his eyes. No. It can't be. Impossible. Raising his hand, Aaron slowly started to bite his nails. Curling himself onto the ground, he continued to bite the nails of his fingers. I must kill him, he must die. Make his life miserable for making me suffer so much. Only after he dies will all the nightmares stop. A strange voice entered his mind as he continued to bite onto the nails of his fingers. Slowly ideas started to implant themselves into his mind as Aaron soon started to bite onto the top skin of his fingers. Must die. Early morning. A soft chill blanked the city of S74, causing white steam to come out from the mouth of the people present whenever they took a breath. Whom. Stretching my body, I let out a large yawn. After the events of last night, we all headed out for dinner and went back straight to bed right after. Reason being that today we were going to have our next matches. With these rounds being more important than the previous ones, a new area was selected to hold the tournament. Arriving at the place, an enormous field sprawled across the place. Most shockingly, an enormous tree stood in the middle of the field. Raising my head and staring at the tree, I was totally shocked by its size as it was at least as tall as some of the tallest buildings in the human domain. At the bottom of the tree were thick roots that deeply etched themselves onto the ground. On the other hand, by the side of the tree were 8 thick branches that stretched outwardly. Placed at the very edge of them was an enormous platform. Most likely the platforms where the fights were going to take place. At this current movement, surrounding the tree was a sea of people. Practically all of the faction leaders as well as citizens of S74 had gathered here. Appearing before them were large circular mirror-like spells that displayed the view of the platforms above. They essentially acted like large monitors. Thunderous noises echoed across the field. The moment I appeared beneath the tree, I instantly attracted the attention of the many people. I didn't need to wonder why they were looking at me as a large projection of my face, while the one of me with the mask appeared. Pursing my lips, I shook my head and headed towards the center of the tree. It was finally time for the real tournament to begin. Chapter 4 16 Battles. Whew. Placing my hands in my pockets, I exhaled as white steam rose from my mouth. A chilly breeze brushed past me as the cold air made me involuntarily shiver. Had to say the mornings in S74 were quite cold. You guys here pretty early. Moving through the crowd, my footsteps soon came to a halt as I gazed into the distance where Hein, Ava, Leopold, Small Snake, and the others were already waiting. I smiled at them. Looks like everyone is here. Well, everyone apart from Angelica. Kind of felt bad for her, but it seemed as though she was happy with this arrangement. Gazing in Hein's and Ava's direction, I asked, "Are you two ready?" "Yes." The both of them firmly nodded their heads. They looked quite confident in themselves. Especially Ava, whose eyes burned with fighting spirit as she tightly held her flute in her right hand. On the other hand, standing beside her, Hein looked a little bit more anxious as hugged his shield with both arms. It had to be noted that a white cloth covered the whole of his shield from top to bottom. The intent behind it was clear. "We will try our best," Hein said, trying his best to look confident. "That's good." Pretending to not have seen the cloth covering his shield, I replied with a straight look. "I really hope you pass." Internally I was a bit worried. After having checked the contestants list, I knew that the chances of Hein and Ava passing this round were not as high as the both of them thought. The opponents were nothing to scoff at. Plus, to make things worse, one guy was a shield user and the other was a beast tamer, not really the best for one-on-one competitions. At the thought of it, a sigh escaped from my lips as once again vapor rose from my mouth. Gulp. What followed after the sigh was a low gulping sound. Turning around, my eyes met with Leopold's as he stared at the slowly rising water vapor. My mouth twitched. I don't even know what to say. His relapses were starting to become worse and worse. Oh, right. Right as I was about to say something to him, I suddenly recalled something and turned to look at Ryan, who was currently standing next to Small Snake. Ryan, has the matter been settled? The matter? Upon hearing my words, Ryan tilted his head, evidently unsure about what I was trying to say. Seeing his confusion, I elaborated. Regarding what I asked you to do back in Henler and that I told you to keep close attention to. A look of realization suddenly flashed on Ryan's face as he nodded his head. Yes, everything is already done. I can turn on the connection whenever you want. Perfect. The edges of my lips curled upwards. If everything went according to what I had set up, I may be able to finally regain my freedom. Of course, this was only granted on the fact that my plan worked and the people involved acted the way that I wanted them to act. If not, everything would be for naught. Oi. Snapping me out of my thoughts, I heard someone calling out for me. Without needing to look in the direction of where the voice came from, I already knew who it belonged to. It was Kevin. Following behind him were the others. Since they were coming from the same dormitory, it was only right that they came together. Stopping a couple of meters away from me, Kevin looked around the place. Lifting his head and staring toward the platforms on the thick branches of the tree, Kevin opened his mouth in amazement. How in the world are we going to get up there? Portals, I said as I pointed towards the distance where multiple small portals were being set up. Turning his head, Kevin's eyes squinted into small slits as he tried to get a better look at the portals in the distance. Oh, that makes sense. Then turning his head to look behind me, his eyes soon paused on Ava. Huh. Isn't that Ava? Kevin didn't try to hide his shock as his words were quite loud, attracting the attention of everyone present. Ava. Shock appeared on the faces of everyone present as their eyes paused on Ava. That's Ava? Is that her? She looks different. Their shock was understandable. After all, Ava was indeed someone who used to be in our class. However, there was something that I didn't understand. Glancing at Kevin, I pointed in Ava's direction. Wait, you just noticed? You know she made it to the top 64 of the tournament. Did she? Yeah. There weren't that many people that made it this far. For him to have not even noticed her was a testament to his unpreparedness. This just went to show that we operated differently. Unlike him, before every round I would spend a lot of my time studying the profiles of each and every contestant present. It was a must. Kind of baffled by the fact that Kevin still did not do this. You've got to be more prepared, Kevin. Glancing at him, I shook my head in disapproval. In response to my words, Kevin scratched his head in embarrassment. Was Ava's presence that small? Perhaps it wasn't even that he didn't come, but that Ava changed too much compared to her time back at the lock. In hindsight, the Ava of back then had little to no presence whatsoever. Compared to her past, the current Ava looked completely different. I too wouldn't have recognized her if I were in Kevin's position. I think it's probably because we just met you again and so we didn't notice her. Shaking my head at his failed attempt at trying to remedy the situation, I shrugged my shoulders. Well, alright, it's not really that important. Taking a step to the side, I decided to introduce Kevin and the others to my group. You guys probably already know her, she's Ava. Hey. Staring at the others, Ava greeted them with a confident smile. Surprise flashed across their eyes as they stared at her. Is that really her? Was what their faces were saying as they looked at her. Smiling, I pointed in Hein's direction. This guy over here is Hein. He has also made it to the top 64. He's a great meat shy. He's great at taking blows. Almost slipped there. Ignoring Hein, who was glaring in my direction, I introduced the others. This drunkard over here is Leopold, this little child is Ryan, and, yeah, well, this guy is Small Snake. Did you seriously have to introduce me in such an unenthusiastic way? Small Snake complained from the side. I scoffed at him. As if, Before I could say anything else, Kevin abruptly walked up to Small Snake and hugged him tightly. It's okay. I understand your sorrows. I know just how much of an ass he can be. Small Snake's mouth trembled as he bit his lips and hugged back. You too. Yeah. My face froze at the sight. Alternating my gaze left and right to make sure I wasn't seeing wrongly, I remained speechless for a good minute. Once Kevin and Small Snake separated from their hug, The way they looked at each other reminded me of two old comrades finally meeting each other after a long war. The hell? So is this some sort of club you created to inflate your ego? While I was looking at Small Snake and Kevin, I suddenly heard a faint voice coming from my right side. Without needing to look, I knew that it was Melissa. I instantly rolled my eyes. Yes, wanna know its name? Well, that's too bad. It's called the Melissa Fan Club. A club dedicated wholly to worshipping you. Dissolve it. Melissa immediately said as her face cringed and her head rolled back. That's kind of rude. That what you say to your fans? Want to die? Already have. Figuratively and literally. Have you two had enough? Stop bickering, the tournament is about to start. Emma commented from the side as she stood next to Amanda, who looked at the both of us weirdly. After Emma spoke, the noises in the background suddenly became louder as the sound of a gong reverberated throughout the area. Dong. As the gong reverberated across the area, a visible excitement enshrouded the surroundings. Staring into one of the magical monitors in the distance, the elven lady from before appeared at the center of one of the platforms, mana surging from out of her body as her sweet and melodious voice rang out in everyone's ears. Participants for the round of 64, please ascend towards one of the platforms when your bracelet lights up. Just as her words faded, the bracelet on my wrist lit up. I wasn't the only one in the group whose bracelet lit up, as Amanda and Jean also had their bracelets light up. To the contestants that had their bracelets light up, please make your way towards the designated arena. Following her words, figures immediately moved towards the teleportation areas set up beneath the tree. Amongst the loud cheers coming from the spectators, one by one figures materialized on the platforms above. Guess that's my cue to go. Moving next to me and patting me on the shoulder, Kevin said. Good luck. Thanks. Thanking Kevin, lowering my head and staring at my bracelet, I headed towards the portal that led to platform 3, the area where my fight was. Swish. Materializing on the top of platform 3, a gentle and cold breeze brushed past me as my clothes fluttered. Because it was so high up, the air felt a lot colder than when I was below. What a view! I inwardly muttered in amazement as I gazed at the platform. The platform was circular and it was extremely wide, with a radius of about 40 meters. Walking towards the edge of the platforms, I cringed a little as I gazed at the massive drop below. Fwop. As I was checking the platform, it was then that a touring figure materialized opposite me. It soon became clear to me that my opponent was an orc. My brows instantly knit as soon as he appeared. That was because his entire presence radiated danger. If I had to estimate his strength, it was about the same as mine. Are you two ready? Out of nowhere, another figure suddenly showed up on the stage. It was the referee. Hearing her words, without wasting any time saying any words to each other, the both of us nodded our heads. Begin. Once the referee's words faded, pressing his large foot onto the ground, my opponent shot in my direction at a breathtaking speed. With his fist raised, a murky green hue enshrouded the orc's fist. Arriving before me, he punched out. Shit. I cursed as I stared at the incoming fist. It was so fast that I was unable to react on time and thus was forced to cross my arms together in a defensive stance. Bang. Soon his fist connected with my arms and I felt a bone-breaking pain course through my body as my body skid back all the way towards the edge of the platform. Stopping near the edge of the platform, I grit my teeth as I tried to suppress the groan that was about to escape from my lips. Inevitably, I failed as I groaned out loud. Ugh. The pain was just too much for me to bear. It felt as though all the bones in my arms had been broken. Shaking my head, I quickly recomposed myself. Lifting my head and staring at the orc in the distance, the mana inside of my body sprung out as I released all of my power. Wariness instantly flashed across the orc's face. Placing my hand by the side of my waist, I rested my hand on the grip of the sword. Looks like I can no longer afford to fight like before. Chapter 417. Gazing at my opponent, I bitterly thought. Looks like I can no longer afford to fight like before. He was simply way too strong for me to not use my sword against. Shing. Unsheathing my sword from my scabbard, I distanced myself from my opponent, who did not give chase. It was clear that he became a little bit warier once he saw me release my aura. This was good. Bought me enough time for me to prepare myself. Lowering my head and glancing at my sword, which was not the same sword Malval gave to me, I took a deep breath. Whew. Slowly, I calmed my mind as I felt the grip of the sword in my hand. The sword felt a bit unfamiliar, but it was still all right. I wasn't planning on using the keiki style just yet, so there was no need to work myself up over the unfamiliarity. Despite the fact that Malvol said that the sword was ready for use, in reality he was only partially right. Setting aside the fact that it was still sealed, its body was too short for me to properly use. It was about half a meter in length. Supposedly it was supposed to lengthen the more seals I unlock. In fact, according to Malvol, one of its unlockable features was that it could lengthen to whatever size the owner wanted. Sounded neat, but yeah, I needed to unlock the first seal before being able to do that. Bit of a pity since I really liked its main feature. Whew. Taking another deep breath, I moved my sword forward and drew a circle in the air. The time it took me to draw a circle was just but a mere half a second. As I drew the circle in the air, a translucent ring suddenly materialized in front of me. Following the first ring, using as little time as possible, I drew more rings. Within a couple of seconds, I had already formed 3 rings. Bang! By the time the third ring formed, with a powerful bang, the orc once again dashed in my direction. It had probably already scrutinized me enough. How in the world is he so fast? I exclaimed inside of my mind as I caught a glimpse of the orc coming in my direction. Despite his size, the orc's speed was extremely impressive. Before I knew it, he had already appeared before me. Raising his fist, he once again punched out in my direction. Catching a glimpse of his attack from the corner of my eyes, I instantly realized that his attack was a lot faster and more powerful than the previous attack he used on me. Fortunately, this time I was ready. HAA. Letting out a scream and glancing behind me where the massive drop was, I took a step back towards the nothingness. The moment I took a step back, the orc's fist and movement faltered, and audible gasps could be heard from the bottom of the arena. This was the exact reaction I was looking for. Go. Waving my fingers with a soft rushing sound, one of the rings moved toward my left, right beneath my right foot. Swoosh. Following the first ring, another ring moved towards my right side. About waist level. Tensing my left leg, I jumped up and used the ring as support for my right foot. The orc, who had now realized what was happening, once again punched out in my direction as a sonic boom followed after his punch. Unfortunately, it was already too late. Propelling myself off of the ring, I flipped in the air and softly landed behind the orc. The moment I landed on the ground, I clenched my fists and muttered, "Gravitational pull." It was at that moment that the rings behind me suddenly glowed and the orc found his movements suddenly become sluggish. Taking advantage of that moment, raising my sword in the air, I drew more and more circles. Each time I drew a circle, I would propel it in the direction of the orc as the gravitation pull effect activated. Kua! Behind me, the orc's enraged shout reverberated throughout the whole platform. As more rings were added, the more sluggish his movements became. However, despite his shouts, I continued to draw more and more circles. After deliberating for a while, I found that this was the best tactic I could use outside of going all out using the keiki style, and it seemed to be somehow working. Unfortunately, there were still not enough rings. I could tell that the current amount of rings I had set up wasn't enough to keep him at bay. Thus, briefly glancing in his direction, I activated the one. "Stay put," I icily said as I glared at my opponent. It was only for a moment, but the moment I activated the one and uttered those words, the orc's movement came to a sudden halt. Deep fear hid beneath his eyes as he involuntarily took a step back. I didn't let go of this opportunity as I drew more and more rings before sending them in his direction. Having reached the Essence Realm for Ring of Vindication. Not too long ago, it took about 15 seconds for each ring to dissipate in the air. Therefore, by the time I drew the 20th circle, the orc was finally unable to move anymore. Despite the orc's many attempts at moving, it was all to no avail as the gravitational pull behind each ring forced the orc into place. Realizing that he was in a deep predicament, the orc's desperate and enraged shout shook the entire platform. As he screamed, his bloodthirsty eyes glared in my direction. He had a look on his face that made me think he wanted to eat me whole. Of course, I merely shrugged it off. If looks could do anything, I would have died the moment I met Melissa. Lowering my sword, I could feel the mana inside of my body drain at a rate that I had never felt before. I guess keeping 20 rings active at the same time is still too much for me. The expenditure behind keeping this many rings was nothing to scoff at, as I estimated that my mana would ran out in about a minute's time. I had to end this quick. Still keeping my face straight, I walked up to the orc. Arriving before him, I stopped at around a meter's length away from him. Glaring in my direction, the orc snarled and gnashed his teeth loudly as he repeatedly screamed. Kuake. Good match. Raising my foot upwards till the sole of my foot touched his chest, I softly pushed the orc outside of the arena. Kua. Unable to resist, the orc bitterly watched as his body fell off of the arena and plummeted to the ground at a terrifying speed. Fortunately for him, there was someone waiting for him below. With a simple wave of their hand, a soft wind blew beneath the orc and his body came to a sudden halt. Since each and everyone present was a representative from each race, the elves tried their best to save as many people as possible from dying. This of course did not mean that you couldn't kill your opponent, but it would be quite a hard thing to do with the referees present. Making sure that my opponent was fine, the referee raised her hand and shouted, "Match winner Karalium." He will proceed to the round of 32. The moment the referee's voice faded, thunderous cheers rang from below. Closing my eyes, I secretly sighed in relief. Thankfully, I only had to expose Ring of Vindication instead of the Keiki style. This was good for me as I could still keep it a secret for when I met an opponent that was far above my league. For example, someone whose rank was in the rank range. They were opponents where I may end up being forced to go all out. Contestant, please make your way back towards the stands. Snapping me out of it was the referee's voice. Turning to face her, I politely nodded my head and did as she told me. Moving towards the edge of the arena, I jumped. Looks like you've won your match. Upon arriving back at the waiting area, I found Gene quietly sitting by himself, solemnly staring at the large projections of the other ongoing fights. Seeing that Amanda was still not here, only meant that her fight was still ongoing. Hooah! But not even a minute after I said those words, loud cheers once again reverberate throughout the arena as a profile appeared in one of the projections. Guess she won. Reflected in the projection was none other than Amanda, who had an aloof look on her face, seemingly unfazed by her victory. Despite that, staring at her from below, I could tell that she was visibly tired by the uneven movement of her chest. Taking my eyes away from Amanda, I turned to look at Gene. At the moment his eyes were locked on a specific projection. What are you looking at? Staring in the direction of where he was looking, my eyes instantly lit up with interest. Kevin versus Gilbert. Now that's an interesting one. Given all of the drama that had happened between the two, there was a lot of animosity between them. Without a doubt it was going to be a good match. The match had still not started, but from the screen I could see Gilbert talking trash against Kevin, who just stood there with an indifferent look on his face, not caring for the slightest bit about the things he was trying to say. Crossing my arms, I looked at Gene. Where are the others? Are they also having their match? Over there. Oh. Raising his hand, Gene pointed toward 3 different projections. They were respectively Ava, Hein, and Emma. At the moment all of their fights had not started as they were waiting for the matches from the first batch to finish. It looks like Ava is fighting against a dwarf while Hein is fighting against an elf. Carefully looking at their opponents, my brows knit. As I had already memorized the profiles of every contestant present, I could tell that they were up against tough opponents. Out of the 2, Ava was the one that got the short end of the stick as her opponent was rank. Although Ava was a beast tamer and she didn't fight by herself, I still found it hard to believe that she could win her fight. The gap just seemed too big. On the other hand, Hein's opponent was somewhat manageable. But it was still tough for him as he, just like Ava, was only rank. In fact, unless they got really lucky, I didn't see the possibility of them winning. I better keep watch of them now. Who knows, they might just be able to pull an upset. After all, they did have a lot of experience under their belt after having trained with me for a very long time. Perhaps I was being way too pessimistic. Taking my eyes away from them, glancing around the other projections, my eyes soon paused on a specific projection. My brows instantly furrowed extremely tightly. That should be Emma. Just who is her opponent? After a while, my eyes opened wide as I saw Emma stare off against her opponent. At first, I didn't pay too much attention, but after taking a second look at her opponent, my heart skipped a beat. Locking my eyes on Aaron's figure, I stood up from my seat. Oh crap, although I took this possibility into account, I really thought it wasn't going to happen. Sneaking a peek towards Kevin's arena, lowering my head, I sent Ryan a quick message. Give me the command quickly. Chapter 4:18. This isn't good. staring at the projection where Emma and Aaron appeared. My face darkened and my heart sped up a little. I suddenly felt an ominous premonition. I should have seen this coming. I should have seen the possibility of Aaron getting matched up with someone like Emma. Or rather, I knew about the possibility, but I still chose to ignore it. Normally, I wouldn't have worried, but the current Aaron was not in the right state of mind. Of course he wasn't. I made sure he wasn't. Back then, when I had taken him outside of the building, I didn't just go to him with the goal of beating him up to satiate my thirst for revenge. No, things were a lot more complicated than that. After Waylon and Douglas took him away from me and after I regained myself, they quickly gave him back to me at my request. I told them that I had a plan in mind. The both of them did not refuse but made me promise not to kill him, which I didn't. Once I gained their permission, I gave Aaron more sedatives to keep him knocked out. From there, I had Ryan create a small chip that was similar to mine and have it installed in his brain. That took about a day to do, and with the aid of a potion I was able to remove any trace of anything ever happening to him. After having learned a lot through the teachings of Jomnuk, Ryan was now able to create an almost perfect replicate of the chip. Well, at least the tracking part of it, which was exactly what I needed. After installing the chip, I also injected him with a little bit of the serum. The one that the monolith injected me over and over again. The intent behind such a move was so that traces of the serum would be found inside of his body, increasing the links to him possibly being 876. Of course, there was much more to it in the plan than that. After all, there was countless evidence pointing to the fact that he couldn't possibly be 876, but I already had a solution for this. Anyhow, the point was that the current Aaron was no longer the previous Aaron. His current state of mind was akin to what I had experienced not too long ago. He was now extremely dangerous and I was worried that something was going to happen. Fear. Lowering my head and glancing at my watch that had just vibrated, I quickly tapped on its screen. It was a message from Ryan. Permission to access granted. Without hesitation, I pressed the on switch. Raising my head and staring in the direction of where Emma and Aaron were, I secretly clenched my fists before gazing in the direction of where the referee was. She shouldn't die from this. Hopefully, the referee should have no problem stopping the fight before anything bad happened. Crossing my arms and glancing in the direction of Kevin's match, I secretly prayed that nothing bad happened. If something happened to Emma, I really couldn't tell how Kevin would react. An eerie silence enveloped Platform 5, as Aaron and Emma stared off. At the moment, they were both just waiting for the referee to begin the match. As the two stared at each other, Aaron, whose face was slightly sunken and had glaring black circles underneath his eyes, opened his mouth. "Hey." A raspy, almost croaky voice came out of his mouth as he spoke. Emma frowned when she heard his words, however, she didn't reply back to him. She knew Aaron all too well. Although he was different from his usual self, an aura of arrogance still radiated from his body. Simply put, she wasn't keen on hearing his trash talk. But it didn't seem as though Aaron got the message as he continued to speak. "Are you close to Rin?" Emma's face froze slightly. His words were so unexpected that for a moment, Emma almost slipped up. Fortunately, she was able to quickly recollect herself as her face became colder. "Why are you talking about a dead person?" "Dead?" Aaron scoffed. A clear look of mockery appeared on his face. I know. His head tilted from left and right as he said those words. Raising his hand, he pointed it at Emma. "I know he's fucking alive, little bitch. I fucking know." Placing both of his hands on his face, his voice trembled in an uncontrollable manner. "I saw it, he was definitely there that night. I can't be wrong." "He's completely lost it," Emma softly muttered as she looked at Aaron. From the way he was acting, it was a clear indication to her that Aaron had completely lost it. Flashbacks of what she saw a week back replayed in her mind as she secretly sighed. "Rin, did you really have to go that far?" The current Aaron was a far cry from what he was in the past. Emma almost felt pity for him. Gone was the usual elegant self. All that was left was an almost deranged and borderline psychopathic version of him. "Begin." Before she could say anything else, the referee's voice rang out, marking the beginning of the match. The first one to move was Emma. Pressing her feet onto the ground, her figure dashed in Aaron's direction. Although Emma knew that Aaron was stronger than her, given his current mental state, Emma believed that she had a chance of beating him. Therefore, unwilling to waste the opportunity, she immediately went all out from the beginning. Mana poured into her body as she quickly redirected all of her mana toward one of her short swords. Hiya! Arriving before Aaron, she slashed down. Despite being lower ranked than Aaron, her attack was nothing to be trifled with as it tore the air in a devastating manner. Aaron, who had only just snapped out of his delusions, was unable to react in time and thus was only able to partly dodge her attack as he only took a step back. Qua. Extreme pain coursed through Aaron's body as a long scar traced from his lower torso all the way towards his right shoulder, and the color red sprayed on the arena grounds. Drip. 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 Taking a few steps back, Aaron's face grimaced in pain as he felt blood trickle down his body. In the background, the booming cheers from the audience reverberated throughout the whole area grounds. W.T. Opening and closing his mouth, Aaron did not know what to say. Raising his head and staring in Emma's direction, his mind blanked. Unfortunately, that slight distraction once again cost him. Repeating the same attack as before, Emma reappeared in front of Aaron and once again slashed down. This time her attack hit him right in the shoulder. Kuwak. A pained groan escaped from Aaron's lips as he stumbled down on the ground. With his hands behind his back, Aaron fearfully crawled back. Raising his head and staring upward at where Emma was, Aaron blinked a couple of times. What's going on? What is happening to me? Why am I losing to such trash? A myriad of thoughts flashed across his mind in seconds as his eyes remained locked in Emma's direction. Aaron couldn't comprehend what was happening to him. He couldn't think straight. With his eyes darting all over the place and looking for something to grab on, it wasn't long before his eyes locked towards the distance. Shing. Just as his eyes locked themselves there, he suddenly felt a powerful force quickly headed in his direction. From the corner of his eyes, he caught a glimpse of Emma's short sword nearing his face. From that point, everything that happened next happened within the blink of an eye. Just as Emma's short sword was about to land on Aaron's face, Aaron's body suddenly disappeared from the spit, startling Emma. Huh. Then reappearing in his position was the referee, who was just as startled to find Emma's short sword directed in his direction. Shing. Waving his hand, the short sword came to an abrupt halt. Spurt. But not even a second after the referee stopped the attack, blood suddenly sprayed all over his body as Emma motionlessly stood on her feet with her eyes wide open. Why you? Weakly turning her head, the last thing Emma saw before passing out was Aaron's smiling face. Opening his mouth, he coldly said, I hope you send Rin your greetings for me. Thump. Following his words, Emma's sight became black and she fell face first towards the ground. As her body fell onto the ground, blood spilled out from her wound, slowly forming a pool of blood around her, and the noise around the arena toned down a notch. At the same time, on another platform, clank. A loud metallic sound reverberated throughout the platform as two swords crossed together. The moment the two swords connected, the air around them blasted out. It was clear that neither party was trying to give the other a single inch. While their swords were locked together, meeting Kevin's eyes, Gilbert clenched his teeth tightly and muttered, Remember the time when I sent you flying across the wall back at the lock? That was intentional. I know. Swoosh. Not falling for Gilbert's provocation, Kevin raised his foot and kicked in the direction of Gilbert's head. However, pressing his foot on the ground, Gilbert was able to quickly dodge his attack and distance himself a couple of meters away from him. Bang. Once he dodged his kick with a loud bang, he propelled his body back in Kevin's direction. Raising his sword, he slashed downwards. Clank. Meeting his attack, their swords once again intersected. Strands of mana swirled on both of their bodies as the two glared at each other, and circular pressurized wind gales shot outwards of their bodies. Thump. Thump. With loud thumps, the two figures clashed under the attention of countless gazes, the outlines of their swords appearing here and there. With the animosity that the two held for each other, neither showed any mercy in their attacks as each and every one of them was aimed to hurt, making the fight look exceptionally entertaining to the audience. Be it heart, head, or even private parts, both of them aimed their attacks toward their weakest areas. As they fought from an audience standpoint, their fight looked even. With neither side giving an inch to each other, it really did appear as though the both of them were equally matched. However, right as Gilbert's attack was about to viciously slash Kevin's neck area, Kevin's body suddenly disappeared from where he was standing. Huh. Before Gilbert knew it, Kevin had reappeared behind him. Startled, Gilbert tried to turn around, but it was already too late. With a simple push, to Gilbert's horror, he suddenly realized that he was out of bounds and his body fell to the ground. H.E. Breathing heavily and staring in the direction of where Gilbert fell, a smile crept up on Kevin's face. From the very beginning of the fight, Gilbert's goal was simple: hurt him. Kevin, who had watched Ren's fight right before his match, thought that this was the perfect opportunity to replicate his tactic. Since Gilbert's focus was on him the entire time, Kevin took advantage of this and purposely led him towards the edge of the arena. Once he led him there, the rest was easy. Using his movement art and reappearing behind him, Kevin simply pushed him out of the arena, marking the end of the match. Match winner Kevis Voss. He will proceed to the round of 32. Following Gilbert's fall, the referee's loud voice boomed throughout the field. However, contrary to Kevin's expectations, there were no loud cheers to meet his victory. Glancing around, Kevin suddenly realized that the stadium was a lot quieter than before. Frowning, he moved towards the edge of the platform to get a better view of what was happening. Glancing towards the other platforms, it was then that Kevin saw it. Emma laying on the ground as blood spurted out of her back, slowly forming a carpet of red blood. Around her, multiple elves were trying to stabilize her condition. From there, time seemingly froze for Kevin as he motionlessly stared at her figure from above. Chapter 419. Rushing in my direction, Kevin shouted. His voice sounded extremely panicked. "Where is Emma?" "Calm down, Emma has been taken by the staff, her father is with her." Raising my hand, I motioned him to calm down. "From what I've been told, she is still alive." Just before Emma was about to get stabbed in the back, the referee reacted in time and slightly shifted her body away, preventing her death, but... Pausing, my brows furrowed. "But what?" Raising my head and meeting Kevin's gaze, I deeply sighed. "But, well, it's not looking too good. She was hit directly in the spine, so I don't know." "Ha." Like a deflated balloon, Kevin stumbled a couple of steps back as his face drained of all color. Grabbing onto his shoulder, I held him up. "Relax, don't lose hope." "The book," Kevin suddenly shouted as he cut me off. My eyes immediately opened wide at his words. Placing my hand over his mouth, I quickly shushed him. "What the fuck are you doing?" Increasing my grip on his mouth, I whispered in his ear. "Get a grip of yourself, the event has already happened, the book can't do anything. Furthermore, there is nothing written on it. You know best since you've seen the book yourself." Listening to my words, Kevin quickly calmed down as his eyes dulled. Seeing this, I asked, "Are you finally calm?" Kevin silently nodded his head in response. Eyeing him for a while, I proceeded to take my hand away from his mouth. Taking a deep breath, I tried to reassure him. "Don't worry too much, I'm sure she will be fine." Despite my words, I wasn't too confident in the things I said. Emma's condition was quite critical. Fortunately, the elves were able to intervene just in time to stabilize her condition, and so she was at least guaranteed her life. Regarding whether she was disabled or not, I wasn't sure. Only time could tell. Taking a deep breath, I turned my wrist and glanced at my watch. Permission to access granted. This is enough for now. Tapping onto the screen of my watch, I turned off the tracking device in Aaron's head. On the upper echelon platform moments before, silence descended on the platform as the eyes of all the members on the platform locked themselves on the one specific projection where a girl lay on the floor in her own pool of blood. "Someone go and get her patched up quickly." The first to speak out amongst the members was the elven queen, whose delicate brows knit tightly. She was evidently displeased by the fact that an incident had occurred. Turning her head to glance in the direction of the others, the elven queen lowered her head and softly apologized. "I apologize for the mishap, it should have never have happened." What is there to apologize about?" Responding to her, Brutus's deep voice reverberated throughout the platform. Despite the fact that he wasn't trying to speak loudly, his voice boomed loudly throughout the viewing platform. "If a contestant dies, so be it. Only the strong deserve to live." "I agree." Gervis nodded from the side as his eyes locked onto the projection in the distance. "All contestants had been warned beforehand of the possibility of death. We can't blame you guys for this." "I see." The elven queen reluctantly nodded her head before standing up. "Still, I believe that this shouldn't have happened during my watch. Each individual present represents the future of our kind, And so their death could significantly damage our futu? As the Elven Queen was speaking, the only one that remained did not have a change in expression throughout the whole event was Octavius Hall, who remained seated on his seat, completely unperturbed by the various happening. No one knew whether he cared or not about what had just happened. It was then that Octavius suddenly felt a vibration coming from his watch. Turning his watch, Octavius indifferently glanced at it. We have detected slight fluctuations from one of the meters the monolith gave to us. The connection went as fast as it came, as so we were unable to properly locate the individual, but it appears as though 876 is currently present. Octavius's brows furrowed slightly. 876. Octavius had almost forgotten everything about him. 876 was someone that the Union had agreed to catch in exchange for the truce. In reality, this was merely a formality thing, as the Union had never bothered investing that much effort into catching him. Since they had agreed to it, they had to do it, but it had never been on their lists of priorities. The reason why he had completely forgotten about 876 was because his signal disappeared a while back. Octavius thought that he had died. Still, since the monolith had never said anything regarding him being dead, Octavius had some people keep watch for any signal. Judging from the current message, it appeared as though he was still alive. Tapping onto the screen of his watch, Octavius sent a message back. Make sure to be on constant alert. If you find his signal again, capture him alive. Once he sent the message, Octavius leaned back on his chair with an aloof look. Whether they captured 876 or not, he really did not care. Late at night, a heavy scent of alcohol permeated throughout a small room. Laying on a small bed was a young girl with auburn-colored hair. With a pale complexion, her frail figure lay on a soft bed. Seated beside her, holding onto her small delicate hand, was Kevin, whose body trembled uncontrollably. A couple of hours after the incident, the elves managed to finally stabilize her condition, allowing for the others to finally visit her. Along with Rin and the others, Kevin went to visit Emma. Taking his feelings into consideration, they all chose to visit at a later hour, giving him some alone time with her. Gazing at Emma's frail figure, Kevin felt a heart-wrenching pain course through his body. A multitude of emotions flashed across his face, ranging from pure hatred and sadness. This is all my fault. Squeezing her hand harder, Kevin clenched his teeth tightly. It was only after someone showed him what had happened that he realized that the person responsible for this was Aaron. An undisguised amount of hatred flashed across his face as he tried his best to keep himself calm. However, that proved to be a lot harder than he imagined as his face turned red from anger. If only I did not stop Rin during that day. None of this would have ever happened if he had not stopped Rin that day. Depression slowly started to sink in as dark thoughts entered his mind. Feel like. It was then that the door of the room suddenly opened and Rin walked in. Staring in his direction and walking up to him, he softly said, Kevin, you don't have to worry too much. The doctor said that she will live. I know. Kevin muttered, his voice shaking. I know that she's going to live. But he also said that Essie suffered from a permanent injury on her back. You will never be able to walk again. Kevin squeezed Emma's hand tightly before muttering, I should have let you kill that time. There was an undisguised hatred mixed in his voice as he uttered those words. Turning his head and glancing in Ren's direction, Kevin snarled through gnashed teeth. You were right, I am too soft. I should have not interfered back then when you were about to kill him. This is all my fault. The more he spoke, the louder his voice became. He could feel himself losing control of his emotions. He couldn't understand what was happening to him, the feeling he was currently experiencing, the heart-wrenching feeling of losing Emma. It all felt too familiar to him. Kevin couldn't quite explain it, but the more he thought about it, the more his body trembled. I can't let her suffer. In response to his sudden outburst, Rin shook his head and placed his hand on his shoulder. It's not your fault. It really isn't. Letting go of Emma's hand, Kevin stood up. Closing his eyes for a short minute, he quickly recomposed himself. No, you're right. This isn't my fault. Raising his hand and wiping the corner of his eyes, Kevin's face slowly became indifferent. If there was someone to blame, it has to be Aaron. He's the one who is responsible for this. A red glow suddenly manifested around his body. Turning his head and facing Rin, Kevin's voice suddenly became colder. I'm going to win the tournament, he suddenly proclaimed. The doctor said that there is a chance of her fully recovering, And that's through the usage of something called an elven tear. I will win the tournament and ask for that. Before Rin could say anything back to him, taking one last look at Emma, Kevin walked out of the room, slamming the door shut behind him. Click. As he walked out, Kevin slowly felt his emotions become numb as a fire lit up in his eyes. Nothing was going to stop him from winning the tournament. Be it Rin, Jean, or anyone else. Kevin was going to destroy everyone. Gazing at Kevin's departing figure, a long sigh escaped from my mouth. Turning my head and gazing in Emma's direction, I massaged my forehead. I messed up badly. If there was someone to blame, it was me. Had I not done what I did, none of this would have ever happened. The reason why Aaron attacked Emma was because of my own personal greed in making him suffer more. Was the move I did wrong? I didn't know. Without a doubt, I felt guilty for what happened, but somehow, a part of me told me that what I did was the right thing. That what I did was a small sacrifice that I needed to take in order to regain my freedom. I felt like shit when those thoughts crossed my mind, but what could I do? I couldn't stop them. Were they even my thoughts to begin with? I really didn't know. Having been made aware of the fact that perhaps my mind was being manipulated by someone, it became more clear to me that the thoughts that I was having could also be a fabrication of the one that wanted to manipulate me. But just who was it? Feel like. Snapping me out of my thoughts was the sound of the door opening. Amanda. At first I thought that it was Kevin, but to my surprise the person that had shown up was in fact Amanda. You're here to visit her as well? Holding onto a bouquet of flowers, Amanda slowly walked up to her and placed them beside her. Worry flashed across her eyes as she looked at Emma, who was currently in a coma. Lifting her head and gazing in my direction, Amanda brushed her hair behind her ear and softly asked, "Do you know when she will wake up?" "I don't know." I shook my head. The doctor said that she also suffered a head trauma, and so they don't know when she will wake up. I see. Nodding her head in understanding, Amanda sat next to Emma and held her hand. I should probably go. It would be rude of me to intrude in their moment. But just as I was about to leave, Amanda's soft voice rang throughout the room. Emma was my very first friend. Her voice was soft, but there was an undisguised pain laying deep within it. Turning around with both hands holding onto Emma's hands, I could Amanda's body trembled a little. She looked especially lonely. My heart pained at the sight. Amanda was not someone who had many people close to her. Yet throughout her life, everyone that was close to her would end up disappearing from her life. Her mom, her dad, and now Emma. The amount of pain she went through was really too much for someone as young as her. Startling Amanda, taking a stool and placing it beside her, I sat down and warmly smiled in her direction. "Tell me more." Lowering my head, I stared at Emma before looking back into her eyes. "Tell me more about your good moments with Emma." Letting out a strange sound, Amanda's eyes reddened slightly. Lowering her head till her hair covered her face, Amanda's shoulders slowly stopped trembling as she replied with a soft hum. Chapter 420. Late night. Sitting up straight in a patch of grass near his residence, Hein looked towards the sky. Surrounded by the millions of stars in the sky, the moon looked especially beautiful tonight as it slowly drew a bright white blanket on the area around him. Sighing out loud, Hein laid down on the grass. Covering his eyes with his arm, he bit his trembling lips tightly. I failed. He failed to make it past the round of 64. Despite putting everything into his fight in the end, the result was his inevitable loss. His opponent was just too strong. Warmth flowed down the side of his cheeks as he tried his best to hold back his tears. But in the end, thinking back about his father and family and realizing that he could no longer get the cure, Hein was no longer able to hold back as more and more tears started to stream down the side of his cheeks. Despite all of the hardships he suffered and his rapid improvement, Hein was still unable to make it to the top 10. It was now that he realized just how vast the world was. Just because he had far outstripped his former schoolmates, it didn't mean that there were others out there that didn't similarly outstrip him. "I'm such a failure," he muttered out loud whilst clenching his fists tightly. Had he trained even harder, he definitely could have won. He had been too lazy in his training. "No, you're not." But it was then that he suddenly heard a familiar voice coming from nearby. Quickly wiping his eyes, Hein lifted his head and looked in the direction of where the voice came from. "Rin." Upon spotting the figure, Hein sat up straight. With a simple nod, Rin sat down next to him. Placing both of his hands on his knees, Rin looked towards the moon in the sky and muttered. You did not fail. As I muttered those words, I took my eyes away from the moon and gazed in Hein's direction. With the side of his eyes red, I could see that he had just been crying. I didn't bring this topic up. Raising my hand, I patted him on the shoulder. If you're worried about your father, don't worry. I can get you the cure. Boo. Before Hein could say anything, I quickly cut him off. Are you worried that I will waste my winning opportunity to get the elven tears? Surprise flashed across Hein's face as I said those words. I smiled at his reaction. His reaction made it quite clear to me that those were his thoughts. Leaning back on the grass, I muttered. You don't have to worry about that. Although elven tears are rare, you don't have to win the tournament to get them. There was no way the elves only had one elven tear available. They had multiple of them. The only issue was getting them to trade them, and I already had a solution long ago. What? Disbelief flashed across Heinz's face as he looked at me. Pointing at me, his voice shook. But didn't you tell me that the only way to get them was through getting the top 10 spots in the tournament? That was a lie. I softly said. Closing my eyes, I feel the nice cold breeze brush past my body. You never had to get top 10 to get the elven tear. What? Despite the fact that I had my eyes closed, I could feel the genuine shock in Hein's voice as he heard my words. His shock was understandable. I had purposely lied to him about the elven tear so that he would try his best at the tournament. He must somehow feel betrayed. Don't think too much. I only lied to you so that you would try your best at the tournament. Opening my eye, I looked straight into Hein's eyes. If I didn't tell you this, you would have never pushed yourself to the limit and would have never realized just how strong people there are out there. Despite his many experiences with me back in Henler, Hein still did not truly the depth of this world. Just because he had been rapidly improving his rank, it didn't mean that he was strong. An example would be Kevin, Jean, and I. We all practiced 5-stars manuals. Because we practice 5-star sword manuals, we spend most of our time mastering them instead of focusing on our ranks like others do. It was partly because of this that the rate of our growth seemed to be on par with some of the other prodigies out there. But it was also because of this that our strength was far beyond theirs. If I fought someone with the same rank as me, I would have no trouble getting rid of them. Unfortunately, the same couldn't be said with Hein, who did not practice a 5-star sword manual and only focused on his rank. Anyways, you can relax. I promised you long back that I will get you the cure for your father. I'm not going to break that promise. Having signed the mana contract, I had to fulfill what I had promised. I see. At my words, Hein's shoulders finally relaxed a little. A visible relief appeared on his face. Turning to look at him, I asked, Are you not mad? Mad? Yeah, mad about the fact that I lied to you. Pursing his lips, Hein shook his head. No. Leaning back, Hein lifted his head and looked at the moon in the sky. Maybe at first, but after listening to what you said, I realized that you were doing this for my own benefit. Hein suddenly lowered his head. And for that I'm grateful to you. Listening to his words, the edges of my lips curled upwards. Is that so? Yeah. Hein nodded his head. Stretching my arms, I slowly stood up. That's good. You leaving? Hein asked with a slightly disappointed look. Massaging my neck, I yawned. Yeah, it's quite late. Still got a tournament tomorrow. Then I won't hold you back. Waving my hand, I bid Hein goodbye and headed back to my room. However, as I headed back to my room, the smile on my face slowly started to disappear. Flashbacks of today's incident replayed inside of my mind. Something doesn't add up about today's incident. The way it played out. It felt odd to me. Something about the incident just felt very odd to me. Or rather, the feeling that I got when Aaron stabbed Emma in the back. Instead of worry or anything else, the first thing that came to mind was, everything is going according to plan. Odd. What was even crazier was the fact that I felt nothing when I saw Kevin lose himself back then. The feeling was a bit different, but it felt as though I was getting rid of a burden. The more I thought about it, the more concerned I became. I have no choice, do I? Halting my steps and closing my eyes, I looked up at the sky and breathed out. Thump, thump. My heart unknowingly sped up. If I want an answer, I have no choice but to do this, don't I? For the first time in a while, I felt fear creep inside of my mind as I took another deep breath to calm myself down. Then going back to my room, I threw my bracelet on the bed and headed for the training grounds. See, I like. Upon entering the training grounds and seeing that there was no one present, I headed for one of the private training rooms. Entering the room, I locked the door behind me and sat down cross-legged in the middle of the room. Taking a deep breath, I channeled out all the mana I had inside of my body. As I channeled my mana, a powerful white hue suddenly sprung outwardly, enveloping the entire room. Gritting my teeth, I continued to channel my mana until only a small amount remained. Just about enough to last me 5 minutes. Once my mana reached that level, I looked towards the corner of the room and spoke up. Lock the room for 5 minutes. Clank. Once my words faded, a loud clicking sound resounded through the room as a timer initiated by the side of the room. 5M00S. Staring at the timer above, I closed my eyes. Thump. Thump. The repetitive sound of my heart beating resounded throughout the room as I slowly opened my mouth and muttered. Monarch's indifference. In a different room. System. Kevin said out loud as he leaned forward and looked at the system interface. Intermediate healing potion. X8. Strength enhancing potion. X2. Advanced healing potion. X3. No, it's not here. Scrolling through his item list, Kevin shook his head. After a while, he quickly tapped on the interface and looked through the system shop. He was trying to see if he could find something to help Emma there. Elven tear. Yet despite how much he tried to look, he couldn't find what he was looking for nor anything that had similar effects to the elven tear. Fuck. Kevin cursed out loud as he tightly clenched his teeth together. Is the only way to get the elven tear through winning the tournament? He thought with a depressed look on his face. But just as he was about to give up, a thought suddenly flashed into his mind. Wait. Kevin's eyes suddenly lit up. Scrolling through his system interface once again, his finger soon paused on a certain section. Melandor. Main 11 planet of the past. On this planet resides the world tree, which has been corrupted into a devil tree. It is where devil fruits are currently being harvested. Difficulty, rank minimum. Time difference, 1/5 human days. Expense, rank core. Damn it. Studying the interface, Kevin clenched his fists as all hope quickly dashed away from his mind. The requirements were just too high. Leaning forward and grabbing onto his head, Kevin's mind became jumbled up with all sorts of different thoughts. Just how could that incident have happened? Why did Emma have to get injured and why now? Although Aaron didn't like Emma, why would he suddenly try to kill her? It didn't make sense. Taking out his tablet, he started the video and replayed it. As he watched the video, his face would repeatedly change. Especially at the exact moment when Aaron stabbed Emma right in the back. During that moment, he had to physically force himself to watch and prevent himself from throwing up. Watching that clip over and over again, a cracking sound resounded as the tablet slowly started to bend. It was about the 8th time that he replayed the video, and right as he was about to stop torturing himself, he finally noticed something. He quickly brought the tablet near his face to get a better look. It was then that Kevin saw it. Right after stabbing Emma in the back, Kevin caught a glimpse of Aaron saying something. Tapping onto the tablet, Kevin slowed down the video. It was only after he slowed the video by 4 times that he was finally able to make out what he wanted to say. I hope you send Rin your greetings for me. Kevin muttered out loud as he deciphered the words that came out of Aaron's mouth. When he did, Kevin's face froze slightly. Did he find out about that time? But how? Rin told him that he had taken care of the situation and that he couldn't have remembered anything. How was it possible for him to know that Rin was behind the incident that happened to him? Something didn't add up. What if? Suddenly, flashbacks of his vision replayed inside Kevin's mind. The vision in which someone resembling Rin killed Emma. A cold chill suddenly enshrouded Kevin's body as he stood up. It can't be. It's impossible for him to have done it. Kevin repeatedly muttered out loud. But the more he thought about it, the weaker his voice became. With heavy breaths, Kevin tried to calm himself down. That's right, this could all be a misunderstanding. I'll go talk to him and resolve this matter now. Rather than just waiting for something to happen, Kevin decided to directly confront Ren. He didn't want to live doubting Ren. Someone who he deeply trusted and even shared his deepest secrets. That's right, this may all be just a stupid misunderstanding. Grabbing onto his coat, Kevin headed out of his room. Chapter 421. Pitch black darkness. What met my sight upon activating Monarch's indifference was pitch black darkness. The darkness seemed to be unending. But it wasn't long before I regained consciousness and wondered to myself. What's going on? Why was I in this pitch-black world? And why could I move as I pleased? This had never happened before back when I activated Monarch's indifference. Did that mean that my previous conjecture was correct and that Monarch indifference had a link with the shift in my mentality? Intense wariness flashed across my eyes. Glancing around the place, I opened my mouth and coldly said, "Where are you? I know you're here somewhere." Silence. As my voice echoed amidst the darkness, all I was met with was silence. However, I wasn't one to give up easily as I once again opened my mouth. "Come out. I've already figured things out." It was then that with a soft hum, someone materialized a couple of meters away from me. It was none other than the other Rin. Or at least that was what I used to think. But now I wasn't too sure. With a thoughtful look on his face, he scanned my body from top to bottom. "You're not half bad," he muttered after a while. I frowned at his words as I felt a weird sense of discomfort wash over my body. The sense of discomfort came from the way he was looking at me. It reminded me of a scientist looking at his experiment. It felt very uncomfortable. Calming down my nerves, I looked straight into the other Ren's eyes and got straight to the point. With my limited amount of time, I could only carefully choose my questions. "You were the one responsible for what happened to Emma, weren't you?" "Me?" Lifting his head, the other Ren raised his brow. A small smile then surfaced on his face as he shook his head. "Now why would you think that?" "Because I would never make such a mistake." "Oh. Aren't you confident in yourself?" Waving his hand, a wooden table materialized in front of the other Ren. Gesturing for me to sit down opposite of him, Ren sat down and raised his hand where a small teacup materialized. Holding onto the handle of the cup, he raised the cup slightly. A small smile tugged the edge of his lips. "Everything that happened is a result of your actions. I am merely someone whose body you took over. Don't bullshit with me." I quickly shot back. "You can stop your little facade. I know that you're hiding something." Walking over to the table, I sat down. Leaning forward, I coldly looked at the other Ren. "I don't know what you're hiding, but I for sure know that you must have had a hand in my transmigration." "I'm hiding something? Transmigration?" Raising his hand, Ren took a sip of his tea before putting it back down on the table. Rubbing his fingers together, he asked a completely unrelated question. "What is your goal?" "My goal?" Baffled by his sudden question, I was unable to answer instantly. Nodding his head, Ren once again asked, "Yes, what is your goal? What is your goal in life? What are you aiming to achieve in your life?" It's a simple question. Hearing his question, my eyes squinted tightly. Despite being baffled by his sudden question, I still nevertheless answered. I wanted to see where he was going with it. "Defeating the Demon King." Upon hearing my answer, Ren nodded his head even more. "Right, your goal is to defeat the demon. No, defeating should be the roadblock that you need to pass through in order to get to your real goal, such as living a peaceful life with your family, or even being the head of the union." Picking up his cup of tea, Ren gazed into the distance towards the darkness. "If the Demon King doesn't die, whatever goal you have will be all for naught." Listening to his words, I didn't reply back. Even if I wanted to refute his words, I couldn't. His words held some truths in them. Unless the Demon King died, any other goal that I had would all be for naught. For example, if my goal was to keep my family safe, unless I defeated the Demon King, that would be impossible. Raising my head, my eyes squinted even more tightly. "Get to the point." Taking another sip of his head, Ren put the teacup down. "I've just answered your previous question." "What are you talking about?" "What answer?" I don't recall ever hearing his answer. All he did was ramble about how I should defeat. Wait. He couldn't be. Raising my head, my eyes opened up. "You?" Opening my mouth, I closed it and opened it again. I was currently having trouble trying to formulate my sentence. Seated opposite me, Ren just calmly looked at me with a superficial smile on his face. "You're talking about the incident with Emma, aren't you?" "It really was you." My hunch turned out to be right. It really was him. He was the reason why I did what I did and felt what I felt. As my thoughts paused there, the anxiety within me only grew. If that was true and what happened to Emma was truly due to his influence, didn't it prove all my previous conjectures? My body shook at that revelation. Closing my eyes, instead of panicking, I forced myself to calm down. It took me a while, but once I managed to calm myself down, I once again opened my eyes. What does Emma's circumstance have anything to do with defeating the Demon King? I asked, anger rising in my voice. Resting his cheek on his fist, Ren frowned. It was then that the air around him suddenly distorted and his demeanor changed to that of a cold and emotionless person. He looked just like me when I was under Monarch's indifference. Don't ask such dumb questions. You already know the answer. A powerful force sprang out from his body, enshrouding the area around me as a dominant force completely enveloped me whole, making it hard for me to breathe. I knew it. Subjected to such force, I showed no reaction. Closing my eyes, I didn't say anything else. I already understood what he was trying to imply. How could I not? It was obvious, yet I didn't want to acknowledge it. Emma, Amanda, Jean, or these so-called friends are only emotional baggage that Kevin carries with him. He does not need them. Opening my eyes, I gazed into the other Ren's eyes. Staring deep into his eyes, I could sense no shred of emotion inside of them. Those eyes reflected the eyes of a man who no longer cared for anything. You must have also sensed it. The current Kevin is far too soft. He does not have his priorities straight. He is the one that the Akashic records chose, and yet he is the one that is least fit to carry on that role. Rin suddenly stood up and turned his back away from me. His cold voice once again rang throughout the whole void. You want to keep your family safe? You want to defeat the Demon King? You want to live? Each and every question he asked powerfully rang inside of my head. If so, this is the only way. No. I shook my head and similarly stood up. That is not the only way to defeat the Demon King. Walking up to the other Rin, I stopped a couple of meters away from him. Yes, Kevin is soft, but he's still young. He can change. I don't see the need for you to hurt Emma or anyone that is close to him. What if he suddenly loses himself in the process? What would you do then? He won't. Rin indifferently shook his head. Kevin will never change. Fundamentally, he is wired to prioritize those that are close to him. He does not think of the bigger picture. Turning to look at me, he continued. His dull eyes peered through my very being. You don't need to lie to yourself. Deep inside you know I'm right. Removing every single burden around Kevin will grant us the highest possibility of beating the Demon King. Isn't that how you previously thought? Have you suddenly changed the way you thought? Meeting his gaze and listening to his words, my brows knit tightly. Why do you speak as though the future is certain? Rin didn't answer. Instead, turning around once more, he coldly said, It's far too early for you to know the truth. Just know that I'm on your side and know that what I'm doing is for your benefit. We alone can't kill the Demon King. Kevin is the pawn that we need to use in order to defeat him. Move him wisely. Before I could ask any more questions, my consciousness started to slip. Realizing this, I cursed inside of my mind. Damn it, not yet. I want to ask more questions. Regardless, within a couple of seconds, my consciousness slipped and the world became even darker. We are cursed, were the last words I managed to hear before everything disappeared. Raising his head and staring into the spot where Rin used to stand, the other Rin let out a long exhale. It seems like you've also become too soft. He proceeded to shake his head in disappointment. If only you followed the plot like you were supposed to. Extreme bitterness and disappointment could be felt in his voice as he said those words. His face, which had remained indifferent throughout the whole exchange, suddenly twisted as he gnashed his teeth together and muttered. I had set everything up for you. All you had to do was follow the fucking plotline, and yet, you seemed to throw away the ideals that I implanted into you as soon as you awoke. A powerful aura sprang outwardly from his body as his face twisted in an extreme manner. Lifting his head and staring upwards towards the darkness, he shouted. And you don't think for once that I will let you go. Once I defeat the Demon King, and I will come for you. The more he spoke, the more his face twisted. Everything that is happening to me is because of you. You are the one that cursed me into this eternal prison. If only you did not choose such an incompetent person, I would have never have suffered so much. It's all your fault. His blood-curdling voice reverberated throughout the void. As he shouted, his voice was filled with nothing but hatred. It took a while for him to calm down, and when he did, his face returned to its usual indifferent self. Closing his eyes, he coldly muttered. Nothing is lost. There are still many pieces that I can set into motion. Be it the current me or Kevin, I will fix the both of you. No matter what you do, you will never escape me. Turning his head in a certain direction, Pressing his foot onto the void, Ren proceeded to head in that direction. Step. Step. Walking amidst the void, Ren's feet soon came to a pulse. In front of him was a familiar white orb. Compared to the previous time Ren had visited, the black threads revolving around the white orb had duplicated, and now about a quarter of it was enveloped by them. Walking up to the orb, Ren placed his hand on the white part. Hiss. A low hissing sound rang out as Ren's hand started to fade. Not yet, Ren mumbled before turning his attention away from the orb. An ominous and solemn aura started revolving around his body as he slowly started to disappear. Things are processing a lot slower than I originally anticipated. If only you didn't figure things out so quickly. Closing his eyes, Ren's body soon became completely transparent. But before his figure completely disappeared, he managed to utter a few more words. Ren, one day you will understand. One day you will understand what I'm doing, and I will make sure you do.